So it's Palm Sunday. What's your understanding of Palm Sunday? Was this a big holiday in your house growing up? I don't know if it was. Do you remember the story here? I guess we just heard it, but what's going on with these crowds? Yeah, the beginning of Passover. Yeah.
And they were all excited about Jesus, and he was coming into Jerusalem on a donkey, and the crowds were gathering around him, cheering, and they were all very happy.
Yeah. Yeah, so here Jesus with sort of all of this kind of reputation that he had amassed and this following and really just being the projection field that he is, has finally turned and left the wilderness and the provinces and the small towns, and he's moving into the seat of power, Jerusalem, the belly of the beast. And crowds gather around because he's entering in a very prophetic way. That's why he's on a donkey in a it says a colt also. One time I Googled, how do you ride a colt and a donkey at the same time? Because the things say different things. And some websites seem offended that I even asked that. And then others said that that apparently it was some kind of a custom to. I think this is kind of funny to picture, actually, and it fits. Yeah, so the donkey would be leading, and then all the bags and stuff would be on the donkey, and then the king would be seated on a little colt that's tied up to the donkey, so it's like a little procession. And it really is kind of a ridiculous picture of how a king would enter a city, you know. Like August actually said that to me. He hadn't read it before. He came up to read it just now, and he's like, Dad, I was like, what? He's like, I'm gonna laugh. I was like, why? He's like, it says donkey so many times. I just keep saying donkey. You know, but it doesn't, something in you kind of chuckle when it says, don't be afraid, daughter Zion, see your king is coming, seated on a donkey. And so the people assume that Jesus, as he turns his considerable power and influence finally towards the heart of the problem, where the corrupt religious system has partnered intimately with the oppressive occupying force. It's where all the injustice is flowing from. Here comes Messiah. And they are excited because things are going to change. Jesus spent 5 days in Jerusalem. So this would have been day one, prologue to day one, 5 days. By day 5, the same crowd that shouted, "Blessed is he," is yelling, "Crucify him." And this poor guy, Pilate, who oversaw the region, was tasked with the trial of Jesus. And he interviewed him, and Jesus kind of was dodging his questions and asking better ones, you know. And Pilate concluded at the end of his interview that I find no fault in this guy. And so he's like, don't worry, I got a loophole for you. It's Roman custom that one prisoner is pardoned at every scheduled execution. So I'm just going to run this by your people, the ones that a few days ago were saying, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." I'm just going to shoot this by him, get you out of here in no time. So he addresses the crowd and he says, I can release Jesus. And they say, "Give us Barabbas." And Barabbas, as far as we can tell, was a Jewish terrorist who had just participated in an attack against the Roman occupying forces. And so the people said, "No, crucify Jesus, give us Barabbas." And I'm sure Pilate his head was spinning, you know. And so I feel the only sense we can make of this is that what the crowd welcomed, riding atop a donkey, was not Jesus the Christ, but a projection of a desire for revenge from the tormented collective ego of an abused people group. Trauma does strange things to the brain. And we've all experienced it in one way or another. Even just the initial shock as an infant, before any kind of individuation has taken place, before any kind of concept of being a separate self has occurred. Just a parent, a caregiver, the life source, experiencing what it is to be on the outside of this protective womb, and then experiencing what it is to see the only way you can possibly stay alive come and go from the room, disappear from sight. I remember playing peekaboo with August, and he hated it. He was so scared when you'd disappear for a minute. And then, of course, there's other things that happen along the way. And trauma does strange things to our perception. And so I feel just in this little tale, there are some significant psychological observations on the human condition that can be made here. So, first being that maybe when we perceive the events of life only through the traumatized lens of our wounded ego, we inevitably project onto others our unconscious desires for life's basics, for safety and security, for power and control, for affection and esteem. It's unconscious. For most of us, we don't realize this is what we're doing. We kind of just feel like we're taking a look around, asking good questions, trying to do our best. And there's just this whole mess of projections that are occurring when the lens that we're viewing through is this hurt part of us. Some folks call it the false self, which is a fair description. But even this false part of us, this wounded part, it's just doing its best to survive. It's doing what it knows how to do. But without that attachment and connection to the source, to who we really are, deep inside, it's impossible to see clearly. I shared this with somebody this morning, and he said, this is like that Eminem song, Window Pane. And I was like, oh, is that right? So I'm going to quote Eminem right now. See if I can shred whatever remains of my reputation in town here. I can't quote it, actually. He just said, window pane. Eminem, I guess he's got a little pun. Your pain, the pain that's occurred on the inside of the window, the hurt, the ache, makes it so that unless it's clean, all you can see through is the pain, and the pain distorts it. And I kind of lost touch with Slim Shady somewhere around 2000, so I didn't know he was on the mental health tip, so it's kind of awesome. It's difficult to see things as they actually are unless we're aware of the fact that we are undoubtedly distorting what we see. And the more in touch we are with where it hurts and how it hurts, why it hurts, or even just that it hurts, we have a better shot of figuring out whether we're seeing what's happening, or we're seeing what we think ought to be happening, or we're seeing what we might be able to get out of the situation, or where. See? The other point is that when we succumb to groupthink, which is a profoundly common phenomenon, we risk participating in insanity, just outright insanity. And this happens all the time because this is our, we're kind of like, we're herd animals, we're pack animals. So, large part for most of us of how we feel safe is to stay in good standing with the group. And the problem with most, or maybe all groups, is that they're an extension of our fragile egos, these constructs. And so much is invested into them that to think outside the box, to consider things from a different angle, you get it. is extremely threatening, and it can be very difficult to extricate yourself from the group, whatever the group is, your family of origin, religion, your church. It's scary to strike out there on your own. I watched enough nature videos when I was a kid to know that it was always the wounded little antelope who was by himself that got devoured by the lion. We kind of know that we need each other to be safe, but we're capable of some genuine insanity when we all get together. And there's only one way to see. So the particularities of our woundings greatly influence our ideas about justice, and they build these deeply felt, often unexamined expectations about how things ought to be, how things should be. And all the associated emotional intensity blinds us to how fickle our judgments actually are. This story is so helpful in illustrating this point. It's like we love him. Oh wait, he's not doing what I thought he was going to do. We hate him. Not just like, oh, never mind. Let's let him be on his way here. Kill him. Extremes and polarities aren't new. So Jerusalem, the city where this whole strange drama is playing out, is the same Jerusalem that King David conquered for the Hebrew people 3,000 years ago, we say. It's where David's son Solomon built the first Jewish temple, and where scores of ancient Hebrew people lost their lives defending the city in innumerable wars with an endless succession of conquering kingdoms. That's pretty much the story of the Old Testament. They just never stop coming. Jerusalem, where the devastation of the Crusades saw Christians and Muslims brutalizing each other to capture and then lose and then recapture and then lose again and recapture the holy city because it had significance to their religious traditions. Jerusalem, the city that the Ottoman Empire violently seized and ruled for 500 years until the British Empire violently seized it from them. And Jerusalem, the point of contention and incredible bloodshed between Palestinians and Jews, like right now. Jerusalem. The word Jerusalem means city of everlasting peace. What's going on here? Just before entering the great city of everlasting projections, Jesus paused, and this is what we see. He wept. He wept over the great city, and he said, if you, even you, if you'd known on this day what would bring you peace, if you could, but it's hidden from your eyes. So, what would bring us peace? Are we any closer to an understanding of this than our ancient brothers and sisters? What? What did Jesus see here that he knew many couldn't see? What would bring us peace? Yeah. How so? What's that mean? Mm-hmm.
He could see God, but everyone else was blind to it in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But God's peace is recognizing him as a Messiah.
I heard somebody say accepting. Accepting, recognizing, seeing.
I think it's a feeling
Yeah, peace is a feeling.
Surrender of our ego.
Self-surrender. How do you do that? Death. Like in the ground kind?
Yeah.
That'll do the trick.
Family peace shaker.
Yeah, it feels like that sometimes.
Probably put to death the notion that you're separate from God.
To put to death the notion that you're separate from God.
Stop looking long enough to realize who hid peace from your eyes and realize that it was you yourself.
Who hid peace from your eyes? You look long enough and you realize that it was yourself. You hid it. I never liked hide and go seek, you know. I remember Lee, the guy that started this church, used to say that we get peace and relief confused. Not they're different things. Relief is when it finally lets up. Peace is whatever it is that's in there the whole time.
Peace is wanting what you have.
Peace is wanting what you have. That's good. So it seems what might bring us peace is like the cessation of our expectations for what is going to bring us peace. You know, it's like our ideas about how it's going to get here. If we could live outside of those ideas, or at least just see that they're thoughts and that they just go on like everything else. Our expectation for how it's going to be. Maybe what would bring us peace is being able to admit that like we actually don't know what's right. We don't know right from wrong very good at all. You know, that was like what got us in trouble in the garden. I was always taught growing up that it was an act of rebellion, you know, like this sort of like mean-spiritedness. And I never paid attention to what the tree was, but it's the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. It's the idea that we can discern for ourselves with absolute clarity right from wrong. So there's some peace in admitting that we're maybe not meant to be doing that as often as our mind likes to. It's its favorite pastime. And then in most situations, even though we think we do, like I remember driving away from the, maybe this is one of the great teachers in life for many of us, is like you have your first child and you're in the hospital and you've got like a little button. And then when you press the button, the nurse will come over and you can be like, why is this happening? She can tell you, and then she goes back and you know. And then she straps the child in your car and you drive away and you think, oh my God, they let me leave with this baby? Like you have to get a license to drive, but you can just make children. Like this is dangerous. So on the other side of the anxiety of recognizing that most of the time I don't know what I need, let alone even what I really want. It's just jumbled up snow globe of stuff to grab at. Making peace with that reality and moving through the anxiety and maybe the shame and whatever else associated with coming to terms with the fact that we are not as good at navigating this life as we would have hoped to be, you know? Peace might have something to do with being able to admit that what we're seeking has already sought and found us a long time ago before we were ever here. And that there is no separation that exists in our mind. That God is at home, it's us who've gone for a walk. that what we're searching for is what's doing the searching. That we've been sought and found long ago and every day. And that what we're seeking rides in on some busted donkey over and over again into our life, always asking the same questions. When what you've always been looking for finally comes and finds you, will you be there to welcome it? Like here? Will you be here to see? What will you do when it doesn't look or act at all like you expected? Will we continue to welcome salvation as it reveals itself as something that we don't even like? Something that offends us, as something that seems to have an agenda all of its own, a sense of self and a purpose that isn't congruent with the plan? Can we welcome what offends our sensibilities? Can we welcome the death of our most treasured illusions, like we prayed this morning? Our reward for good behavior, our long overdue comeuppance, a final justification for all the wrongs that have been done to you, purpose, the meaning of life. What the Christian message seems to ask is, can we welcome a crucified God? That's a really weird religion, guys. Just like... And today, as in all days, this moment as in all moments, Christ stands on the periphery of the human heart and he says, if you knew today, do you know today, what would bring you peace? What would bring you peace today, now, here? Where is it? And where is it?
Everywhere.
And how do you feel it?
Surrendering. Not trying so hard.
So Jesus only spends 5 days in Jerusalem as far as we can tell. And in this time, he is in like full-blown like Old Testament prophet mode. He's doing all the crazy stuff. You know, he's weeping prayers, sweating blood, turning tables over in the temple. He's praying poetry. He's saying, woe to you. He's feeling it, you know. His time is short. And he reserves the majority of his harshest language occurs here in Jerusalem. And, you know, that's kind of what the prophets were. Like, if you go through the Old Testament and you read some of the things that these folks had to say, like I read one time that the most unique aspect of the Hebrew religious tradition and historical tradition is that they left all their mistakes in. Like, you know, generally, like, history is told by the winners or whatever, and then, you know, you kind of scrub it all out. But the majority of the Old Testament is just these prophets showing up and saying, you know, this isn't right. And so Jesus is in this prophetic mode, and this is probably the closest definition to what a prophet is in the scriptures. It's from Isaiah. It says, a prophet is the voice of one calling in the wilderness. So from somewhere outside the heart of the system comes this voice. Prepare the way for the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for God, a wide path. And every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, the rugged places a plain. And in this, the glory of the Lord will be revealed. And the glory will be revealed to all people. And all people will see it together. And so the role of the prophet is to balance, to reduce, to reveal that, like, God is a lot more simple than we make him out to be. The role of the prophet is to build a highway for God. And this is sort of confrontational to an aspect of human nature that wants to build like toll roads and that have checkpoints and requirements and well-marked signs. Checking for passports. Letting some in, keeping others out. And the tolls, like the regulations and requirements, they keep the high places high and the low places low, and they offer a kind of order that makes it easier on some level to organize in groups and to understand what's expected of us, and they're useful. I mean, somebody's got to pay for this stuff, you know? But for most of us in this room, I bet we've already recognized that we build lines to keep the bad stuff out, and at some point we notice that we're keeping everything out. That it actually is impossible to specifically exclude. Once the excluder kicks into gear, it's, I'll take it from here. And what Jesus said over and over and over again, demonstrated, was that when we exclude what's foreign or disruptive or undesirable, when we just nip it in the bud, then we also exclude whatever unique blessing comes only on the other side of the struggle of welcoming and accepting. We might continue to resist the reality of this fact, but reality remains undefeated. And Christ, the message that Christ carried into the belly of the beast was essentially what got him in the most trouble. He's breaking the rules was one. And the other thing was just this aspect of radical inclusion. This is what he always was getting in trouble for. The good news was a little too good. You got to temper the good with a little bad, or otherwise you won't appreciate it. Ration it out in some way. And he just kept giving it away. And he revealed that reality's open secret is that it's we've already said it, it's all grace. You got to stop trying so hard. That you're actually all right just as you are today. It's fine. But the most direct way to experience what it is to be loved and held and carried is to stop trying so hard to hang on. And this is the disruptive message that Christ carried. And this is the message that killed the messenger. I read this a little while ago. This is a German philosopher, Schopenhauer. He said that all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. Third, it's accepted as being self-evident. This word, the word paradigm? It comes from the Greek word for pattern. And it's crazy. The paradigm was never used. It's not in the English vernacular at all until 1962. Isn't that interesting? Because it's so common at this point. You'd think people have been talking about paradigms for a long time, but we're only, 60 years into this word. And the guy who coined the phrase said the paradigm is a set of overarching and interconnected assumptions about the nature of reality. Overarching, interconnected assumptions about the nature of reality. And a paradigm provides the largest framework within which research takes place. And he said if we pull back far enough, we see that science goes through alternating periods of normal science and then revolution. Normal science is when the paradigm's working. The existing model of reality is unchallenged. They say things like, hey, this makes a lot of sense, or look at all the problems we can solve now that we understand the big picture. Now that we get it, we finally pulled back far enough that we see the whole elephant. Revolution occurs when the anomalies begin to pile up that can't be explained or solved by the current accepted paradigm. The painful thing is that the paradigm isn't simply just a current theory, but it's the entire worldview in which it exists. Normal science, revolution, repeat. It's a universal pattern. Pre-existing model, the crisis, the rupture, the new paradigm. Construction, deconstruction, reconstruction. Order, disorder, reorder, life, death, resurrection. A star is born when atoms of light elements are squeezed under enough pressure for their nuclei to undergo fusion. The only thing that creates a star is intense pressure, full collapse. Diamonds are made of carbon, so they form as carbon atoms under a high temperature and pressure. They bond together and start growing crystals. They do one of two things. Both stars and diamonds undergo complete collapse, intense external and then internal pressure. And this either calcifies and transforms them into something brilliant or blows them up into dust. And this is the pattern that Jesus rode into Jerusalem, onto a cross, and out of the grave to reveal to us that this is a universal pattern. This is how he named it. He said, listen carefully. Unless a grain of wheat's buried in the ground and is actually dead to the world around it, it's never any more than a grain of wheat. It remains what it was. But if it's buried, it sprouts and reproduces itself many times over. It becomes something new. And so in the same way, anybody who holds on to life just as it is destroys that very life. But if you let it go, reckless in your love, then you'll have it forever, real and eternal. Yeah. Is CC in here? Are you playing? Who's playing? If anyone's musical, you can come up on the stage now. Thanks. Yeah, we'll talk about this more in the next series that's coming up in just a couple of weeks. But when I read the story these days, I just see that the whole world's spazzing out around Jesus. And the scriptures say he set his face like flint, like stone on Jerusalem. He stayed on the path that he knew had been laid out. And he knew that this path was leading to his own death. And I have a sense that he also knew it was leading to the death of all the projections that were cast upon him and all the illusions of humanity, all these things that were cast upon him, expectations, ideas about God and how things ought to be. He carried all of this. And all those ideas are born out of our sense of separateness, which is what the word sin means. And the weight of that, what was the death of Jesus? But in his life and his death and in the resurrection is the revealing of life's ultimate pattern, the way things are. We can't circumvent death to experience resurrection. The rupturing is a process that we have to endure. And we can't stage our own comeback or put the pieces back together. I mean, I try. We can patiently wait. We can feed whatever. Light, gratitude, peace, patience. That there's always something sparkling, no matter how dark it is, how bleak it is. This is one of my favorite poems. I'm going to read it as conclusion, and then we'll just spend a little time in reflection here at the end. It's William Stafford. It's called The Way It Is. He said, look, there's a thread that you follow, and it goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. So it's 11:12. So we do have some time here together, and and at this point you're kind of woke. You're free to move about the cabin. The elements are available for communion if you would like to take and eat. Please do. And you really can use this time whichever way you see most fit. You can talk and pray with each other. You can, if you make your way over here to this corner, maybe that chair that's strangely placed in that open space. If you need prayer and you sit in that chair over there that's wearing a scarf, will somebody pray? Janelle, I see you over there. Somebody will come pray with you. There's my mom, Corey. You can take a nap, you can reflect, you can make a run for it. You're welcome to use this time however you'd like. And at 11:30, I'll come up and officially dismiss us. Thank you for being here this morning.